The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Well, I don't know if this happens anymore. I'm told that maybe it does. But I understand that some people in some places get what used to be called a 13th check. It may not happen at this time of year. It may happen at this time of year. For some people, you might get it in your birthday month. That I understand is quite common. I think some government departments do that. You might get a bonus at some point. Sometimes things happen, and for various reasons to do with the market, how the company does, you end up getting a bonus. Tonight on Personal Finance with Warren Ingram, we're talking about what you should do with it. Warren Ingram, of course, is a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital. I have to say, Warren, when I told some people that I know we were talking about this tonight, almost the universal response is, what's a 13th check?
I can't believe it. It feels to me like a lot of people still get them. So we move in different circles. You're obviously in the billionaire circle, and I'm in the low paid circle.
Very good, very good. Okay, so if you know it's coming, and it's very tempting, obviously, to spend it or spend part of it, I presume that there's some common things that happen that you can talk about, and I presume there are a couple of common mistakes that people make, sometimes very quickly after they get the money.
Yeah, it's almost like someone winning the lottery, where something lucky has happened, and they treat this bonus that they've earned through hard work and good performance as a very lucky windfall, something that they didn't plan on. And often we see that money getting spent very quickly and not necessarily in the most productive way. And if you're in that position where you are going to get a 13th check or an annual bonus, you can't look at it and say, well, this is just, because it's a lump sum, I can blow it on a holiday or something. And maybe the parallel here is, if it's the same as, if it's equal to your normal monthly salary, there's no way that you would take that monthly salary and just go and spend it all, on one holiday, because what would you do with for food, et cetera, at the end of the month. And so maybe to think about this lump sum and say, actually, I need to treat this as a lump sum, but divided by 12. And then what is that amount, and what should I do with that extra amount, rather than just as one big lump sum that, easy come and easy go. And we're no better off than I was after the payment. So I think that it's because it's a big lump sum and it's irregular, we psychologically frame it very differently. And so I would say, number one, you should treat this as another month's salary, if that's the size of the bonus, and then decide what can you do with it in the most constructive way. And I know people are going to say I'm a Grinch, and that I'm saying that you can't spend the money and have some fun with it. I'm saying you can't spend all of the money. Just be careful and just be balanced in your approach.
Your questions for Warren Ingram tonight, 072 702 1702 for WhatsApp voice notes, 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. But how to manage a 13th check, you might have other questions as well. Okay, I suppose when you get a windfall, you should do what the finance minister should do tomorrow. He's got a little bit more money than he expected, and there are a couple of fires he could put out with it.
Yeah, and for those of us that are in the position where you're renting a house, if you're struggling a little bit to make ends meet, and maybe that rent is not being paid on time, this is the opportunity to get that up to date, and maybe set aside some money for next month's rent, just to get you ahead of the game. If you're a homeowner and you maybe not so diligent on your rates bills or your levies, then again use this as an opportunity to settle those. And then for parents, January's just, I know we're still all getting ready for December and the year-end holidays, but January's just around the corner, just after that, which means it's school fees again. And so, what we do know about school fees is it's all good and well that you've got the money to pay the fees, but what about the books and the uniforms and all the other stuff that comes along with it? So just, getting ahead of that kind of an expense and prepaying and pre-preparing for all of that, so that when January comes around, you're not trying to deal with that. So I think that those are two good ones. And then maybe, look at your debts, and if you've got a debt that costs you more than 20% a year, that's, for me, is a financial fire, and that's something that you could put out with this money. So typically, if you don't know what your debts cost you, I'm talking about things like credit cards, overdrafts, personal loans, microloans, all money to the loan shark. I found out last week that some people pay loan sharks up to 60% interest in a month.
Oh,
and
wow.
And that is just financial catastrophe. So if you've got extra money and you've got a loan like that, then you know what to do with it. Please go and settle that as fast as possible.
So, I mean, obviously, if you owe money, the best thing to do is to take the windfall and use it as a windfall to bring down debt, which over the course of your next year will give you a much greater rate of return on your bonus.
Exactly right. And you mentioned the finance minister. So if, I'm convinced he listens to the show every night. And when you're sitting with far too much debt and the interest is eating up your monthly income every single month, then the way to get yourself some breathing room is to pay off some of the capital that you owe, so that the interest will be less next month. And that's the way that you sort of break this debt cycle and turn it into a positive cycle. And so that's the thing that we can the breathing room we can give ourselves when we get a bit of extra money and we're struggling with debt. And just to understand, the stock market's done brilliantly for investors both in South Africa and overseas. And we're seeing returns of 20 or 25 and maybe 30%, which is absolutely phenomenal, really exciting. But just think about that. Your credit card is probably costing you 25% guaranteed every single year, and it's compounding against you year after year after year. So you need to know that settling that gives you a huge step forward when you then can start the following month from a position of at least zero, and not having to kind of dig yourself out of a hole that's just growing against you.
Good to hear your questions for Warren Ingram on 072 702 1702. Warren, we're about 10 minutes into this conversation and I haven't yet heard the phrase emergency fund. But presumably, that is also a good place to put some money.
Yeah, that's once you've kind of put out the fires, or maybe you're one of those people that doesn't have a debt issue. The only thing you do is you owe some money on your home loan, or you've got a car payment that's under control. Then the real kind of, to me, the thing that separates people who get onto that financial freedom path from those that struggle is the people that have an emergency fund tend to get life sorted a little bit more easily than those that don't have an emergency fund. And so if your 13th check isn't big enough to get you an emergency fund that's equal to 3 months worth of your expenses. So if you spend 10,000 a month, then your ideal emergency fund is at least 30,000. And if your 13th check isn't that big, then at least start putting money aside. And whether it's $100 or 3,000 or 5,000, it doesn't matter. It's allowing you to get ahead so that when the emergency happens, and of course what will happen is that emergency arrives when you can least tolerate it financially, and so that might be the 1st of February, just after you're trying to get through January. And if you've got some money set aside for your emergency fund and your car breaks down, at least you've got money to draw on from your emergency fund, and you're not going into deeper debt on your credit cards or overdrafts. So to me, emergency fund is really the difference between kind of just trying to get through the slog and then starting to future-proof yourself and really getting yourself on the right path to financial freedom.
Okay, so if that's sorted out, I mean, there are other places you can go. There's a tax deadline in February. You could do something with a retirement annuity, perhaps.
Yeah. So we don't get many breaks, tax breaks from our friends at SARS. They've got bills to pay themselves. But one of the things they do give us is we can if we make a contribution to our retirement funds. Let's say you do your normal retirement fund contribution from your salary, but then you've got some extra money and you want to do a top up. You can do up to 27% of your salary as a contribution to retirement funds, and SARS will actually give you money back. And so for me, it's kind of a no-brainer. You're getting a free ride from SARS on a portion of money that you're adding to your own savings for yourself for your retirement. So I like to take advantage of that tax break from SARS, and certainly that would be, knowing that we've got a deadline to do that before the end of February every year. We don't have much time left, so if you get a windfall now, between now and then you know what to do is get going on that retirement fund contribution.
And then obviously, I mean, there's some things you can do around bond payments and things that would make a huge difference. In other words, I suppose what you're suggesting is that you've got to think quite cleverly about this bonus.
Yeah, you want to spread you want to spread that money into a few different things, and what the other one that I really like is our tax-free savings accounts. That we get the one lucky break from SARS is retirement fund contributions. The other one is we can contribute money to a tax-free savings account, and all of the growth that grows on that money is tax-free for us. You don't pay dividends tax, you don't pay tax on interest, you don't pay capital gains tax, and so if you haven't got a tax-free savings account, or if you haven't maximized your contributions, which are 36,000 Rand a year, then a windfall is a great way to kind of get that going and to make sure you're topped up for this year. And so to me, the retirement funds and the tax-frees would be one of the very positive steps I would take once my emergency fund is locked and loaded.
And January and February, I always see December as kind of the most expensive month of the year, but actually you get back from the holiday, you get back from being at home for a few weeks, and suddenly you find that January and February are unbelievably expensive. A lot happens.
Yeah, I don't have children, but whenever I talk to my colleagues, friends, and clients who have children, they would tell me that December is expensive because of the holidays and entertaining the kids. But these beloved children seem to do this thing called grow every year, and every year they get a bit bigger, and every year the uniforms need to be replaced, and school shoes, etc., etc. And then the schools give you a list of things that you need to buy in preparation. And so absolutely, January and February are expensive. And if your children are out of school and they go to university, that starts in Feb, and that's also very expensive. So for parents, I think maybe December, January, and February are just hectic months to kind of get through. For other people, you might find that you've got a rental agreement, and that runs from 1 January to the end of December, which means 1 January next year, your rent is going up. And so we find that all of these kinds of costs tend to catch us at the start of the year. And if you can set aside a bit of extra money now to handle those cost increases, it just makes that, that rising cost a little bit more palatable, a little bit easier to deal with, so that you don't then spend March to kind of November next year trying to catch up and get ahead again.
You are going to ungrinch yourself over the break, I hope, Warren. But I do have a question for you from Sarah saying, I keep seeing these super successful entrepreneurs and CEOs giving financial advice on social media, things like, I just invest in yourself, or I took risks and it paid off. But their advice feels completely disconnected from my reality. I have a regular job. I try to pay off debt and save a bit each month. Why does financial advice from really successful people often feel so useless for the rest of us? Am I missing something? That's such a great question, Sarah. We'll have answers. We'll have Warren's response in just a moment.
The Money Show. Personal finance with Warren Ingram.
9 minutes to 8. Sarah's question, Warren. It's such a good question because I see them too. I see these super successful entrepreneurs and CEOs giving financial advice, things like just invest in yourself, or I took risks, and it feels so completely disconnected from my reality. Why does financial advice from really successful people feel so useless for the rest of us? I mean, I'm not that interested in Jeff Bezos's advice, I have to say, Warren.
It's also almost on a, as if they're on a different planet from us. And so I get it. I think it's a little bit about human nature because, maybe to use running as an analogy, if I had to try and get, really quick at running 100 meters and let's just say really quick for me, I'm not going to go to Usain Bolt, who would find running 100 meters really easy. He could probably run 100 meters backwards as fast as I can run 5 meters. And so it would be very hard for Usain Bolt to teach me properly in a way that I understand, because he has no concept of how hard it is for me to run quickly compared to him. And so I think, when people are in a different stratosphere, and in both situation and ability, then the advice that they're going to give is just going to be unrelated to our own situation, our own reality. And that's not a critique of the billionaires or the super successful people. It's just that's the situation they're in. I will say, though, that Sarah's talking about social media. The other point here is social media is full of pretenders, people who go and take a photo of themselves in front of some really expensive car or some fancy house, and if you do a bit of digging, you realize it's not their car and it's not their house.
Yeah.
So we've got to be very careful of the influences. But what I would say is, you're not, if you're Sarah and you're in this situation, you're not missing something. It's probably better to find a role model a little closer to home, someone who maybe has just kind of taken themselves, a level up from their previous financial position. So someone who might just have, moved themselves onwards and upwards from where you are, but not way ahead, just slightly ahead. And talking to people who may be a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, but from a similar starting point as you, what you learn from them is the really good steps that they've taken, the really fundamental steps that they've followed to move their lives in the direction you want to go. So the advice from them will tend to be much more realistic. What I would always say is you can't expect that people are going to give you, absolutely brilliant financial advice and kind of steps that you can follow. Follow these 7 steps and everything will be fine, because they're going to share their experience, and it's your responsibility to listen to their experience and filter out what you think can work and what won't work for you. Equally, that some of the advice that they'll give you will be completely wrong, not because they're silly, but just that sometimes it was just luck that moved them forward.
Yeah.
You can't always rely on luck as your strategy.
No, it doesn't work like that. Talking of role models, people close to us, we actually have a voice note on the whole issue of how the 13th check worked for them over the years.
Good evening, Stephen. This is Selma from Roodepoort. When my child was still at school, I used to get my 13th check end of November, and that was usually a day or 2 or 3 before the schools closed. So I immediately went, and in those days you still had bank checks, which I then quickly went and got, handed to him overnight and said, tomorrow morning in first break, you go and stand in the queue and you pay for next year's schooling in total. So I knew after that, regardless what happened to me, his schooling for another year had been paid for. Thanks for a lovely show. Bye.
Thank you, Selma. Yeah, I mean, I know people who do that. It's the first thing they do, because then if something happens to their job or something, they know that that's paid for, Warren.
What a deal. And it means that you've got a bit of extra cash flow through the rest of the year per month, because you've catered for the school fees. I know the schools used to give you quite a big discount as well if you paid the school fees as a lump sum up front. And if that lump sum's not so, or the discount is not so good anymore, then maybe set aside that money in a separate money market account that you then use to fund the school fees every month. Or alternatively, don't worry about the discount, just pay it and it's done. So I love that. Thanks for the voice note. It's a brilliant share.
It's a very good way of doing it. All right. In my household, there's an expression, I'm going to spend it on ice cream, because when the kids were very young, someone would say, I'm going to give them some money, and we would say, they'll spend it on ice cream, which is what they were supposed to do. They were very young. And when we say we're going to spend it on ice cream, we mean we're going out to dinner or we're going on holiday or something like that. Warren, are we allowed a little bit of ice cream with our 13th check?
Absolutely. I think, I'm the first one to kind of set my holiday budget at the start of every year. And I think it's the thing that motivates me to do the hard stuff. So I think if you take, somewhere around 10 to 20% of your bonuses and you use that just for the proverbial ice cream, that should be guilt-free, as long as you've taken the balance and you've done the things that we've discussed now and built in, a bit of kind of moving yourself financially forward. Then we should reward ourselves. That bonus is not just a lucky lottery win. It's actually a reward for very hard work that you've put in over time. And so you should reward yourself and recharge your batteries with the things that give you joy, because that's what will make you, kind of motivated for the next year. And so always we should reward ourselves, but we should just do it in balance.
And we should remember why we do it sometimes too. There was I won't name what industry it was in, but there was an organization that used to have an advert saying, remind yourself why you work so hard. There's something to that. You do need to have a little bit of fun.
We do, and it should be guilt-free. If you've set aside and you've done the responsible things, what do people say now? The adulting things. Then by all means go and use that money and be frivolous if that's what gives you the reward, because that is what will fill the soul.
Warren Ingram, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that. Warren Ingram, co-founder of Galileo Capital and a certified financial planner.